CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. All right, we're back on CMMS Radio. Returning with us is Paul Lachance. He's with Software Equity Group, and we got something really important to talk about today. It's all these tariffs, and this is not a political thing. This is all about manufacturing, technology, all of us trying to move through this world. Something he put up lately out there on LinkedIn. We're going to talk about it. We're going to carve it up. Paul Lachance, welcome back to CMMS Radio.
Thanks, Greg. It's always awesome to be here with you.
I am really kind of fascinated by this topic, recent events, what's going on, how these tariffs are going to make an impact. And I think, obviously, today, if I can get this out soon enough, maybe as soon as tomorrow, people will realize there's a lot going on in the stock market. This is not about financial advice, none of that kind of mumbo jumbo. We're talking about the direct impacts, things we should be considering as it relates to the tariffs. So what exactly are the tariffs and what are they intended to accomplish in terms of trade and economic policy?
Yeah, and I want to reiterate what you just said. This is not about politics for me as well. I will start off by saying it's my personal belief, especially after watching and studying the manufacturing sector for decades, that I am a free trade guy. I 100% support U.S. manufacturing and protecting U.S. jobs. That goes without saying. Always been that way, always will be. I just think there's better ways than tariffs. But to define what tariffs are, and again, this is a high-level description, but tariffs are taxes imposed on importing goods by a country's government. And they're typically paid by the importer and often passed along somewhere to the consumers or the manufacturers, which can lead to higher prices. So, for example, if I'm a U.S. automobile manufacturer and I import leather seats from a supplier in, say, Europe, and that country is subject to a 20% tariff, I either have to absorb the costs, pass it on to the consumer, or find a new supplier. And if I can find one in the US, awesome. But that's not always the case in this global economy. But either way, the price for my automobile will probably need to rise to cover those costs. Typically, it is passed on to the consumer. What literally happens is the U.S. government collects those tariffs at the border, and that money goes into general federal revenue. And there are some really good objectives for why these things happen. I mean, this is like sort of in theory. They are to protect domestic industries, to make foreign goods more expensive and less competitive. It will generate some amount of U.S. tax revenues. In theory, to reduce trade deficits by discouraging imports and boosting local production. And another thing that I think everybody wants to see is encourage reshoring or more domestic investment for future plants, especially in manufacturing heavy sectors. To me, what's going on right now, especially in the news, we're recording this as of April 3rd, it serves as leverage in trade negotiations. I mean, the current administration is all about negotiation and pressuring to give the best for the U.S. And I think that's a lot of what is going on. Most economists who understand this modern global economy don't like tariffs, or at least on their own. There are better ways. And I'll just throw out an example, another real world example. Like in 2018, in the Trump's first administration, the U.S. imposed a 25% tariff on steel and 10% on aluminum imports under a national security rationale. The goal was to protect domestic metal producers. The impact, however, it did help boost U.S. steel production temporarily, but it also raised input costs for manufacturers, especially in sectors like automotive, construction, and machinery. So there's a trade-off. And again, they can lead to higher prices, supply chain disruptions, and of course, retaliatory tariffs. On their own, tariffs are challenging, but when paired with other broader industrial strategy, it can work, at least in theory.
What about the PMI? The Purchasing Managers Index. What does that specifically measure, and why is it considered to be a barometer of the U.S. manufacturing and industrial sector?
Yeah, and the PMI, and this is the LinkedIn post I put up yesterday that talked about, like the PMI, the Purchasing Managers Index, is it comes out once a month. It is a survey-based indicator. It comes out from an organization called the Institute for Supply Management, ISM. And it basically tracks business conditions across all of manufacturing. I think they have 13, I hope I have that number right, different sectors that they study. So it's everything from food and beverage, automobile manufacturing, chemicals, et cetera, et cetera. And it measures, they send out a survey to tons of these manufacturing organizations, and they're measuring 5 key areas: new orders, production, employment, supplier deliveries, and inventories. And basically, it's this range. Everybody puts in, from their perspective, from their industry, a 0 to 100 score. So when all that gets washed out, there's one PMI number. It comes out on the first business day of the month. The one came out in April. It's actually technically the March PMI. It came out on April 2nd, April 1st, which was last Tuesday. And if it's above 50, it indicates we are an expansion in manufacturing. If it's below 50, it's viewed as contraction. And it's largely viewed as a leading economic indicator. It offers early insights into shifts into manufacturing activity, which we often see a ripple in the broader economy. Manufacturing is approximately 10% of US GDP. It's highly sensitive to input costs and demand. PMI is closely watched. You'll see, like, when the PMI comes out, again, it's always the first business day of the month. The stock market often will go up or down based on what you see. So that's just a sort of a general description of what the PMI is.
So when we look at the most recent PMI reading, and I'll bring up the chart here, why is there growing concern? How does this tie into the current tariff policy? And what are the recent trends in the manufacturing sector?
Yeah, and this is I've been waiting for the March, which just came out again on Tuesday, PMI, because all the talk of tariffs. So if the chart is visible, you can see, and I'll just kind of talk you through. The chart goes back to July of 2019, and the reason I start there is because that's when the last U.S.-China trade war happened. That was where the first Trump administration initiated those tariffs specifically to China and created that U.S.-China trade war. And it caused some pretty big drop in the PMI. It went into negative territory, below 50, for the rest of 2019. It also caused challenges in the supply chain because these manufacturers in the US needed to find supplies and parts and materials, and China was becoming too expensive because of the tariffs, forcing them to look elsewhere. And that caused a ripple in the supply chain. We just started to get out of it at the end of 19 into 20, and we were starting to end into expansion territory again in the PMI in manufacturing, and that's when COVID hit. And so you'll see a sharp decline in the PMI in the early days of COVID. And to my surprise, and I think to the surprise of a lot of people watching this, it roared back during COVID. Even though it was a crazy time and the supply chain was really messed up, as we all know, the PMI in U.S. manufacturing was well above 50 for a long period. It wasn't until I think it was October of 22 that we dipped back into below 50 on the PMI. And that was caused, we're still in the end of COVID, and supply chain was still messed up. We had high inflationary pressure, high energy costs, and a number of other factors that were keeping that PMI below 50. We went on a long and extended, and if you're looking at the chart, you'll see that large gray area for 26 consecutive months we were below 50 in manufacturing. We just started to creep out of it in January, and in February And now, boom, the March reading, again, it came out April 1st, it went below and it slipped back into contraction. And why it's concerning to me is this reflect, if you look at the survey, you look at the PMI, and you can Google that or and look at the report that comes out, but declining new orders, slowing production, rising input costs. Many of the survey respondents, and again, this is across all of manufacturing, many of the respondents talked about economic uncertainty and pressure from tariffs. It's like a repeat of what we saw in 19, but it's a much wider swath and it's much more of a global situation. So what happened on today, the news that came out today, or it came out last night with the press release from the White House, is this broad-based 10% import tariff and higher reciprocal tariffs in certain situations, certain countries. Now this is a global thing. This is hitting everybody. And it's going to make imported materials more expensive. It's going to squeeze margins. It's going to slow investment. Will it do the things that we talked about at the beginning of this that are good, like reshoring and bringing back U.S. manufacturing? It may be possible. It's going to be a long ways till that happens. And there will be problems with short-term supply chain disruption, and I believe price inflation in the meantime. And that's certainly reflected in this most recent PMI. I will be watching closely for the next couple of them.
Yeah, and we definitely want to get updates from you on that when we can make that time like we're doing today. What should U.S. manufacturers be doing in these turbulent times to stay both competitive and resilient?
Good question. Well, first off, it's a small world these days. I mean, anybody who spends any time analyzing the manufacturing sector, or you are a manufacturer, you realize how interconnected the global economy is. It's rare that a product is 100% US based. I mean, they're there for sure, but chances are, things are coming from different places. And as much as I would love to see manufacturers continue to reshore, that brings challenges as well. The labor market here is tough. There's not enough people and the costs are high. And automation is kind of changing how we use labor anyway. I don't think it's going to be exactly the same. With that said, manufacturers, there's a number of things they can do. Number one, you have to embrace digital transformation. And again, digital transformation is looking at the problems that you have, the challenges and opportunities, and how can you look at them in a new light, and how can they be rectified, improved, leveraged by adopting these sort of industry 4.0 tools like CMMS, like predictive maintenance, like real-time analytics, digital twins, the things you can do to improve efficiency, reduce downtime, SaaS software. You can include things like ERP and supply chain, production planning, MES, and of course, maintenance operations with CMMS help manufacturers navigate these uncertain times. It improves agility. Also help you in your supply chains. Like a good CMMS system will give you multiple options of where you can find suppliers and manage multiple suppliers. You can't just have one supplier anymore for your spare parts or the materials if you're in your manufacturing process. You need to look into multiple places. You got to build those resilient and have transparency in your supplier network. And technology can really help with that. But basically, I think that manufacturers, you got to focus on operational efficiency. It's going to be more expensive to operate. Your materials are going to be more expensive. You got to stay competitive. How do you do that? Well, technology can really help. And that's what digital transformation is all about. I also think that modern manufacturers, you have to be ready and adaptive to these policy changes. This is a crazy new world, and maybe it feels really crazy on today with the news that just came out, but you got to be able to monitor this stuff, and you have to be able to adjust. I believe that a digitally transformed environment gives you more resiliency, transparency, ability to make better decisions. So I think those would be the areas I would start.
Well, this has been very helpful. I want to get working on it quickly, and I just want to let everybody know that you'll be able to find this post. I'll put a link into it, but if you go look up on LinkedIn, Paul Lachance, it's Paul, and then it's Lachance, Lachance. He is chief industry strategist, and he's got a nice write-up on it. You've seen the graph here. Go and check that out. And, his role at Software Equity Group, it's really what he just described, keeping a close eye on these things for all of us. This whole thing was not meant to sell or promote CMMS or anything like that. It's about understanding a current event, a pressure, and then how does technology play a role in this? Because technology can help you with your efficiencies and all the things that Paul said. The one thing I would add to it is your organization's going to have good, solid, basic fundamentals in place. If you don't have that, it takes time, but you can do it. Don't ever give up, and reach out to experts that are here to help you, that are really trying to stay agnostic about who they serve. They should be serving you. Anybody in manufacturing, anybody in the maintenance operations, anybody in that supply chain network. We want everybody thriving. That's really what we want. Very lofty goal, but it's what we should all be chasing. So, Paul Lachance, thank you once again for being with me here on CMMS Radio.
It's always awesome to be here, Greg. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You got it. Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.